May is National Mental Health Awareness Month, a time to break the silence, reduce stigma, and prioritize emotional well-being. Let's continue to have honest conversations and create space for healing, growth, and support wherever you go.
Hello, oh, oh, hello, oh, oh, hello, oh, oh, oh. She no one designer.
Welcome back to the DLOH. My name is Danisha Abair, and I am your host. In today's episode, we're honoring Mental Health Awareness Month by addressing one of the most nuanced and often unspoken emotional experiences. We're going to be talking about a type of grief that isn't always acknowledged. It often goes unnamed. It's the grief you might feel when you lose someone with whom you had a complicated, distant, or even painful relationship with. Sometimes this person has passed away. Other times, they're still alive, but unavailable in some way. Either way, the emotions can be heavy, confusing, and difficult to talk about. If you've ever found yourself mourning a relationship that wasn't quite what you'd hoped it would be, or you find yourself struggling to make sense of how to grieve someone you were never truly close to, this episode is for you. Let's explore that gray space in grief. You'd be surprised to see that there is somewhat of a gap in the definition of grief. And I think it's because grief and loss are difficult to discuss, difficult to name. And because of that, our definitions reflect that unknown as it relates to grief. According to the American Psychological Association, grief is defined as the anguish experienced after significant loss, usually the death of a beloved person. Grief is often distinguished from bereavement and mourning. Now, bereavement is the condition of having lost a loved one to death. A person experiencing bereavement can likely experience some emotional pain and distress, and they may or may not express that emotional pain and distress. Mourning is also associated with experiencing grief following the death of a loved one. Now, I'm not a fan of the same word inside of a definition. So for clarity, mourning is, again, the loss of a loved one due to death and the period with which this occurs. It usually involves some type of change in emotions, and it's also associated with some sort of behavioral change. Grief is often portrayed as a response to a clear and loving relationship, someone we cherish deeply and are devastated to lose. But grief doesn't only exist in those circumstances. There's a unique kind of grief that surfaces when we lose someone we were estranged from, had mixed feelings about, or were never emotionally close to. In these cases, someone may grieve what could have been, what was never said, the version of the relationship you hoped for but never got, or the idea of reconciliation that will now never happen. This is sometimes called disenfranchised grief. It's a grief that isn't widely recognized or validated by society, and yet it is very real. Grief in these situations can bring a storm of conflicting emotions. Someone might feel sadness and relief, guilt and anger, numbness and confusion, or even shame about how you're grieving or not grieving. Some may wonder, am I allowed to feel this way? The answer is yes. There is no rule book for how one should feel, and there's certainly no timeline. Grief can also bring back memories, some comforting, some hurtful. It may trigger old wounds or make you confront unresolved pain. All of this is normal. This type of grief response can reflect the complexity of the relationship. Navigating grief from a strained or distant relationship is less about following steps and more about creating space. Space to feel what's true for you without the pressure to get over it or to make it neat. Here are a few supportive tools and reflections that can help someone move through this type of grief. The first one is to name and normalize your feelings. Your emotions are valid even when they're contradictory. You can feel angry and sad, disconnected and confused, grieving and relieved. These emotions don't cancel each other out. Naming what you feel without trying to fix it right away is useful. The next one speaks to grieving the hopes, not just the person. So sometimes what we're mourning is the idea of who the person could have been to us. A loving parent, a present sibling, a safe partner. It's okay to feel grief for the emotional safety or connection that was never there. Recognizing this helps to bring clarity to why the loss feels so big, even when the relationship itself wasn't so close or easy. The next tool is almost a practice, and it touches on saying what was never said. Many people carry grief over the things that they never got to say. Even if the person is no longer alive or no longer safe to talk to, you can still release those words. For example, writing a letter without giving it to anyone else can allow you to express those words without the presence of the other person. You don't necessarily need the other person to release those words. Being able to acknowledge your truths privately can offer a form of emotional relief. Next, you're able to honor the grief on your terms. You don't have to participate in public mourning ceremonies. Sometimes they can feel hollow or painful. So sometimes people may skip the memorial, or maybe they don't want to see old photos. You're able to honor the loss in ways that support your healing. So that could be a private walk, lighting a candle, or just naming your experience with someone that you trust. This is non-traditional And again, this may not be accepted by others around who may be grieving as well, but grief really is there isn't a standardized way to grieve. So I'm speaking to those individuals who may need to hear this. And lastly, some days may feel heavier than others, and unexpected feelings may resurface over time. So be gentle with yourself. Grief doesn't resolve quickly. It unfolds and it reshapes itself over time. Now, I want to spend a little bit more time on those experiences of grief where the person that you're grieving is still alive, but emotionally distant, absent, or unreachable. This kind of grief is known as ambiguous loss, and it's a loss without finality or clear resolution. It's the grief of what might never be, even while the person is still physically present. This might include a parent who was never emotionally available, a friend who disappeared from your life without explanation, or a loved one lost to dementia, addiction, or estrangement. In these cases, grief may linger quietly for years because the relationship never ends cleanly. And that brings us to closure. What is closure, really? Culturally, we're often told we need closure to move on. Some final conversation, a gesture, an apology, or a moment of peace before goodbye. But the truth is, closure doesn't always come from the person who hurt or disappointed us. And in many complex relationships, it never comes at all. Closure is not necessarily a single moment. It's more of a process. Sometimes it's accepting that you may never fully understand why things happened the way that they did. It might mean letting go of the need for the other person to validate your pain. It might be choosing to create meaning or peace within yourself, even without answers. So if you're waiting for a specific moment to close the door on your grief, know this: you are able to start healing without it. Closure can be a quiet decision you make, not a loud event you wait for. Since this episode is about grieving someone with whom you had a distant or strained relationship with, I thought it would be helpful to have an accompanying practice. This practice is a reflective journal prompt. This journal prompt is called What I Needed, What I Felt, and What I Choose. It might take about 10 to 15 minutes to respond to these questions. But if you like to pause here, or if you like to pause after I say the 3 questions, feel free to do so and take as much time as you need. This is also a great practice to do on your own and maybe speak to your therapist about what came up during this reflection. The first question is associated with what I needed. So, What did I need from this person that I didn't receive? What did I hope the relationship could have been? The next set of questions are associated with what I felt. So, what emotions come up when I think of them now? Is it anger, sadness, guilt, relief, numbness? Let yourself name them honestly. And the last set of questions are associated with what I choose. What do I want to carry forward? And what do I want to release? How can I honor my grief while also honoring myself? Grief isn't always clean. Sometimes it lives in the in-between. And when we lose someone we had a strained relationship with, living or gone, it's okay to feel relief, regret, sadness, anger, or nothing at all. Whatever you feel, let it be welcome. Let it be yours. You're allowed to grieve, even when the relationship was complicated. As we continue through Mental Health Awareness Month, I encourage you to give yourself the grace to grieve in your own way. Thank you for tuning into the DLOH. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who may be walking a similar path. And remember, your healing doesn't have to look like anyone else's. Until next time, take care of yourself.
To say hello, oh, oh, hello.